So it was right after Christmas and the New Year, and I got a call asking whether I could join a group of attorneys on an emergency delegation to Gaza. It didn't even take me a minute. Yeah. I didn't even think about my schedule, my family, that was my immediate reaction. Then, of course, I said, you know what, let me look into my schedule, my family. The reason for the delegation was that, you know, the proportion of civilian destruction and civilian population that were killed was just out of reach. It was unbelievable. And this is, you know, we all have our cause. This is my cause. These people, the Palestinian people. My cause in general is human rights and civil rights. I work with kids. I work with people who've been discriminated against in the United States. But these people, the Palestinian people, for me, are one of the most vulnerable populations. You've got a strong country that's been occupying you for the last 60 years with one of the biggest armies in the world, supported by our country, the United States. And then you've got these other people that have yet to be allowed to go back to being a country. I think my earliest memory of their plight was probably when I was 9 or 10 years of age. You know, we lived in Europe until that age. We would go back almost every year as I grew up, and you know, I enjoyed my time with my grandma and my aunts and uncles, all that lived in that area of the world. And it was a beautiful summer vacation. And that's when I learned, you know, the story of my ancestors and my relatives, that the reason we weren't living like the rest of the people lived, i.e., you know, mostly within geographic areas that you can get to, was because of the history of their being occupied and their being kicked out of their own homes. So we would hop, skip around, you know, Jordan and Lebanon and the West Bank and Palestinian areas to see my cousins. And so, you know, my view was kind of limited to the Palestinian people through the circle of my family. And then I actually married a man who was born in a tent. And I thought that my friends, I mean, my cousins and my relatives were spread out. Well, his were like all over in different countries. And they never had a place they could actually call home, occupied or not occupied. I'd gone on 2 different delegations before, one after the massacres in Sabra and Shatila in Beirut, Lebanon, in the 80s. The next one in 2001 after the uprising in Jerusalem. I have gone on maybe 30 years of these, one at a time every 10 years it seems, and nothing's changed. The occupation is still there. The collective punishment is still there. But what's changed is we've upped and racketed up the damage we can do and the destruction we can do. And the inhumanity seems to get deeper and deeper. I didn't know what to expect. On the other hand, I knew what to expect more than some others on the delegation with me. There was 7 attorneys, pretty, you know, diverse group, some Jewish, some Arab, some just plain, you know, Catholic American activists. Yet we all went there with the mission of, was there illegal use of U.S. weapons and other weapons by Israel, i.e. were they using these weapons in ways they shouldn't in the civilian areas? Was there destruction of civilian infrastructure? Was it random? Was it intentional? Was there prevention of aid to civilians and humanitarian aid and emergency care, health care aid? Because the numbers were obnoxious that we heard. There were over 1,300, almost 1,400 deaths in the civilian population. 430 were children. I never imagined that I would hear people tell me their story as if they're telling the evening news. I mean, there was actually no emotion left. For example, I spoke to Mr. Abed Rabbo, who tells me the story of being in his home and there was an Israeli tank outside. Then he heard them ask him to ask the owners and the members of this household to come out. And so he and his family, mother, mother-in-law, children, all walk out with their hands up with white flags or white towels or white sheets, whatever they had, in the air, basically saying, "Look, we're surrendering. We're not fighters." So they waited and waited, and that 10 minutes seemed to go on and on. The next thing you know, a third Israeli soldier comes out of the tank. He just blank shot the 2-year-old, killed her, shot the 4-year-old, killed her, and shot the 7-year-old who's now in Belgium, can't walk. These stories went on and on and on. They would just burn homes, burn people. These people are landlocked, airlocked. They're in a box. They're in a jail. Israel is controlling the top, the bottom, everything. I don't know, this time it hit me harder. I don't know what it is. I think it's because it's like, what next? I mean, will anyone listen? What is it going to take for the everyday American to understand that these people have the same dreams, the same hopes? And the saddest part is, this country, Israel, was built based on the need for a safe haven for the victims of a Holocaust. What I saw was a Holocaust. I almost, sometimes I feel, oh my God, I have got to stop. People don't want to keep hearing about this. But I can't. You cannot see what I saw with my own eyes and then stop and pretend it's not happening. It's happening, and we here are supporting it. We here are supporting it. You know, I don't think the everyday person wants to see suffering of people. On the other hand, you know, everyone's busy with their own lives, and so they don't have time to commit. The only thing we need to commit to is to call our country to be accountable, to make others accountable when they're using our dollars, our hard-worked dollars, to support armies that are targeting civilians, that are killing those 2 little kids. And that was just one incident. There were many like that. I'm Palestinian American, okay? I am not a terrorist. My father, a pediatrician, who I'm amazed every time I turn around in this city, oh, your father was my doctor. He is not a terrorist. My mother, who comes from Jerusalem, who spent Christmas and Hanukkah and the Muslim holidays with her friends, her neighbors. They grew up together. She's not a terrorist, okay? We're no different than those people over there, except that you see our faces. We're not abstract. Come on. When are we going to wake up and say, no more?